It wasn't too many years ago that a long and cold winter was something to be feared. Exposure, lack of food, and the threat of wild animals during the long nights were all things that our ancestors had to contend with. From those fears sprang monsters that thrived in the cold and preyed upon their shivering victims. For most people these days, winter weather is, at worst, an annoyance or inconvenience. For some, it's a chance for recreation, either through winter sports, or that best of all possible outcomes, a day off from school or work. As someone who grew up in northern Minnesota, I was always well aware of how bad winters could get, but unlike those who came before me who lived without central heating or supermarkets, I've never feared for my life, no matter how cold it got or how much snow piled up. While wintry conditions can still wreak havoc these days, their effects are usually minimized thanks to modern infrastructure and emergency management. Still, there persists a primal fear of the long dark winter that's reflected in some of the mythical monsters that humans created to give form to the unfeeling and deadly season. In better times, the end of the year was a cause for celebration, with myths centering around holidays and festivals, though they still retained some element of menace. I'll be going over a few of these frigid fiends today, so grab some hot chocolate, bundle up, and settle in by the fireplace as we explore some winter monster myths. The Wendigo is an evil spirit of the forest, conceived by the Algonquin-speaking native peoples of the northern US and Canada. It's a terrifying and malevolent creature that has an unquenchable hunger for human flesh. No matter how much it feeds, the Wendigo is always hungry and often appears extremely gaunt, with skin stretched tightly over its long and gangly limbs. In some depictions, it has an exposed animal-like skull. Its claws and teeth are sharp enough to rend human flesh to facilitate its feeding, and it's very difficult to kill, though being a beast of winter, fire is usually a good choice. In some myths, the Wendigo can also bring about harsh winter weather, which can lead to starvation and famine, the kinds of conditions that might lead people to resort to dire means to survive, including cannibalism, thus becoming Wendigos themselves. That's the myth at least, though there was one case of human Wendigo-inspired butchery that was reported as fact, and it wasn't even born of starvation. A Cree trapper named Swiftrunner confessed to killing and eating his family during the winter of 1879. Though other food was available, he claimed to be tormented by the spirit of the Wendigo, which compelled him to commit his horrible crimes. He was executed on December 20th of that year. That's the only confirmed case of Wendigo psychosis on record, with most other accusations being akin to witch hunts. In Swiftrunner's case, his taste for whiskey might have also played a part in his derangement. The myth of the ever-hungry Wendigo serves as warning against greed and excess, sins that were especially well known among the native Algonquin peoples. The people of the tribe needed to cooperate to survive, especially during the harsh winter season, so someone exhibiting selfish behavior was vilified and viewed as evil or monstrous, perhaps spawning the myth of the Wendigo. In modern times, that concept has been adapted as a warning against the excesses of capitalism, where, like the Wendigo, those afflicted consume far more than they need, but are never satisfied and always hunger for more. Something to maybe keep in mind during the next Steam sale. Perhaps no holiday season monster has been as gleefully embraced by the general public as Krampus. This horned, anthropomorphic goat-like creature is the bad cop to Santa's good cop. When good Saint Nick would visit bad children the night before his feast day of December 6th, it wasn't very becoming of him to punish them, so the devilish Krampus took up that role. You think you have a toxic coworker? Imagine being a literal saint and having to work side by side with the devil. As Santa's subordinate, Krampus delivered the traditional bad gift of coal, while also threatening misbehaving children or whacking them with a branch or switch, and sometimes outright abducting them. So be good for goodness sake. Krampus probably dates to pre-Christian times, though there's no consensus for his exact lineage. Some call him the remnant of a pagan tradition, that of the horned god, and that festival goers dressed like him in ancient times. In more recent years, Krampus gained significant popularity in Central and Eastern Europe, particularly Austria, in the same area that gave us the menacing monster known as the Orko, which I talked about in a previous video. From there, his popularity spread through the 19th and 20th centuries, thanks in part to Christmas cards and other artistic portrayals, some of which painted Krampus less as an evil monster and more as a lecherous fiend, which probably fed into the Victorian notion that lust is a sin spread by the devil. Nowadays, we have plenty of books, comics, movies, and games featuring Krampus, who's become sort of the unofficial bad mascot of Christmas. He's kind of a Christmas anti-hero that some people have adopted as a form of rebellion against what they perceive as the over-commercialization of Christmas. Some adults even participate in Krampus runs, where they masquerade as the creature to frighten children into behaving. This holiday season, you could do the same, and give your child the gift of expensive therapy sessions. The winter can be cruel, but it can also be beautiful. and it's from that beauty that we get the myth of the Japanese Yuki-onna, or Snow Maiden. Like a freshly dusted landscape, the Yuki-onna is serene and tranquil. But like the onset of a sudden winter storm, that tranquility can rapidly morph into something deadly. Different regions of Japan each have their own versions of, and names for, the Yuki-onna. Yuki means snow, and the second part of her name can represent any number of words for woman, but she typically appears as a tall and pale woman, usually young and beautiful, and dressed in a white kimono. A ghostly apparition, she floats over the snow, leaving no trace of her passing. Sometimes she lacks feet altogether. Her danger isn't as obvious as that of other monsters. She typically tempts men with her beauty or lures children away from their homes with her motherly charms. Once the Yuki-onna gets her victims into the wilderness, she freezes them solid with her icy breath, or she kills them and drinks their life force like a vampire, or she simply abandons them to the elements where they freeze to death. Sometimes she simply appears at someone's home and asks them for water, hot or cold. Cold water makes her grow larger, while hot water melts her. On some rare occasions, she converses with her would-be victim and has a change of heart and lets him go, especially if he's young and handsome. Some legends explain the Yuki-onna by saying that she is the spirit of a woman who died of exposure during the winter, or, given her affinity for children, she might be the vengeful spirit of a mother whose child perished in such a way. Tragedies like these have happened since ancient times and could have given birth to the myth of the Yuki-onna. However, her first mention in print was fairly recent. In the 15th century, the monk and poet Sogi claimed to have seen a Yuki-onna. She was 10 feet tall with pale white skin and hair, and her translucent kimono clung to her shapely figure. She vanished into the snow when Sogi tried to speak with her. A few centuries later, the British naturalist Richard Gordon Smith spent 9 years in Japan recording and compiling various myths, where he learned of a somewhat more plausible explanation for the Yuki-onna, and Sogi's vision in particular. Mysterious disappearances naturally give rise to fancies and a fanciful people, and from time immemorial the snow ghost has been one with the people of the north, while those of the south say that those of the north take so much sake that they see snow-covered trees as women. In other words, maybe Sogi was just a little drunk and horny one cold winter night when he mistook a tree for a Yuki-onna. He was a monk after all, so he was probably a little lonely. Winter monsters are usually solitary beasts, but that's not the case with the goblin-like Kallikantzaroi. These vaguely human-like creatures have a number of strange qualities that make them more eccentric than truly dangerous. Well, they would be dangerous if they could focus on their one task. Throughout the year, they saw away at the tree holding up the earth, but just before they finish the task and collapse the entire planet, it's Christmas Day and they're compelled to come up to the surface to cause mischief for 12 days. Hey, everyone deserves a break from their job over the holidays, right? Once the 12 days of Christmas are over, they go back underground and resume their task, only to find that the tree is completely regenerated and they have to start over. They're not that smart. The Kallikantzaroi are creatures of Balkan and Anatolian folklore. Small, dark, hairy, and humanoid, but with goat-like features and shunning sunlight and fire. One way to keep them from getting into your home is to keep a log burning in the fireplace for the 12 days of Christmas, so they don't enter via the chimney, a version of the Yule log tradition. To keep them from getting in the front door, you put a colander, aka pasta strainer, on your doorstep. The Kallikantzaroi will try counting its holes, but it has to keep starting over because it refuses to count to 3, which it deems a holy number, thus proving that Gabe Newell is a Kallikantzaroi. A child born on Christmas Day was considered destined to become a Kallikantzaroi, so to purge him or her of this fate, a parent would dangle the child's feet over a fire to prevent its claws from growing. I shouldn't need to tell you that this is a bad idea. Kallikantzaroi cause all kinds of mischief during the Christmas season by harassing people, stealing or befouling food, acting horny, and causing all kinds of random mayhem. Sort of like drunken idiots at your Christmas party. In fact, that might be where they come from. One theory regarding their origins is that, during the winter festival celebrating the Greek god Dionysus, a combination of masks, alcohol, and rude behavior might have led some people to believe that crazed monsters were wreaking havoc. Or at least it would have made for a solid excuse the morning after, when your hangover prevented you from remembering exactly why the house was a mess. Clearly it was the work of some kind of malevolent creature. Kallikantzaroi are sometimes considered to be shapeshifters, strengthening one belief that links them to werewolves, another type of monster that people supposedly change into during the night, leaving no memory of the deeds they committed in the morning. It makes you wonder, how many other myths have been created as excuses for public drunkenness and wild behavior? Probably quite a few. As you can see from these examples, winter monster myths can range from the disruptive to the truly deadly, not unlike the season itself. While we have less to fear now than our ancestors did, many of these myths still have a place in our lives today, and they often teach valuable lessons, ones whose true meaning may have been forgotten in our efforts to adapt these myths for modern sensibilities. Whatever holidays you celebrate this season, or if you celebrate none at all, here's hoping that you'll be inspired, or maybe scared to death by these myths to spread a little cheer, or at least not embarrass yourself so badly that you have to blame your drunken shenanigans on imaginary creatures. Thank you so much for watching this video about winter monster myths. Please like and subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know what you thought of it, or if you have an idea for a future video. Until next time, stay warm, and beware of strange women wanting to take you out in the woods, whatever the season.